So how do you want to fuck this pig? Do you want to do it British Prime Minister style?
Start the game already!
I feel like I've missed something very important. Context that makes that make sense.
Okay, so there are always stories of famous people, but politicians specifically. The one going around currently is that J.D. Vance had relations with a couch, vice presidential nominee for Trump's campaign at the moment. It's not true. Like it's verifiably not true. There's some. It's a good joke. It's a great joke, and you can totally see him doing it, but he didn't do it. In a similar vein, there was a prank that when David Cameron was the British Prime Minister, a story came out that when he was in university, so like 19 or 20 years old, there was a prank where they had a pig's head, and the sort of initiation into whatever secret society he was going to belong to was that you had to put your dick in the pig's mouth. Like it's a pig's head, it's dead. But of course, that got exaggerated and made into way more than it is. It was a little bit of a deep cut. If you're British, you'd get it. I don't know if we have any subscribers over the pond. We probably don't.
Well, I'm glad that you explained it. I feel enlightened, if nothing else.
I'm not sure that it's important information. Nobody needs to know this.
We've never discussed anything that qualifies as important information on this podcast.
Oh, that's not true. You did point out the difference between Java and JavaScript once.
You got me there. Hey, what are you drinking?
I have a Kilkenny Irish Cream Ale, which I have poured into a glass because drinking it out of the can because of the widget was a little bit awkward. How about you?
Well, it's been one of those weeks, so I'm going to start with, I'm not fancy like you. I've got a coffee mug instead of a nice glass. I've got my last can of Summersby apple cider that I'm going to pour into this. And because I need something a little bit more, I'm going to take my Funny Hat tequila and pour it on top of that.
Oh, God. Oh, you're having a purple Jesus party, like right on the podcast.
Bottoms up.
Oh, man. That is a funny hat. I don't know if I'm fancy. I bought this mug at the dollar store.
Mine literally says coffee on the side.
Well, I mean, OSHA regulations, you've got to label your containers. Oh, boy.
So what have you been up to?
Well, Cindy has been away. She's actually down at the Ameliasburg County Fair. The Ameliasburg World's Fair, which is hilarious considering it consists of like one building and a baseball field. It's a great fair, great country fair with lots of like baked goods and competitions like that and stuff. But it means that I've been on my own for a week. So I have a bathtub full of dishes. I have basically eaten nothing but Doritos and spicy noodles. I am out of almost everything. And I may have lost a cat.
Wow.
That's a joke. If like anyone who knows my cats is actually listening, both of the cats are fine and they've been cuddling with me in bed every night. But yes, my life becomes a little bit disorganized when my wife is not around. She is definitely of the two. Like we have skill sets that sort of mesh together, right? And hers are all of the organizational and keeping us on track with things skills. And mine are the ones where like I break things and lift heavy things. So that's how our arrangement is arranged.
Well, I guess, so for context, we had a note in our document about whether it was appropriate on this podcast to talk about depression in the context of nerds. And I don't know whether we're going to talk about it or not, but at least I get why you wanted to talk about it now.
It is definitely factored into the discussion. Yes. Yeah.
Poor Telson.
Yeah, it's funny how much how much of a hole. I mean, she's gone for like 5 days, right? But it's funny how much of a hole that leaves in your life when, you know, a person that you literally spend every day with is suddenly gone for a bit.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. It's very true.
Makes me feel a whole lot of empathy for when I was working out west, because I was gone for 2 weeks at a time.
I was under the impression after the complaining and griping that happened last year that this wasn't going to happen again.
Oh, the fair?
The Ameliasburg Fair.
It was on the rocks. There was some question about whether it was going to go forward. And I mean, I don't want to tell tales out of school, but I don't think that, like, the volunteers that run the fair, right, have been the same people for a very long time. And there's not a lot of new blood coming in, so a lot of the people who are like in charge of the thing are getting ready to stop, right? Because they've been doing it for so long. So it's hard to, and like, so there's two problems, right? You bring in new people, right? It's hard to get them to do that kind of thing because people aren't really, like, young people aren't into county fairs for the most part. Some are, sure. But you have old people who are like, well, we've always done it that way. And you have like the young people coming in and going, yeah, but that's dumb. We should do it like this because it's better. And maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But that conflict is definitely a conflict.
Now, it's probably worth providing some context. Cindy, and by proxy Telson, used to live in the township/ward of Ameliasburg a very, very long time ago. And I understand you've still got some family ties down there. But you live currently 3+ hours away and have for
almost 10 years. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's
I
almost
understand
4
Cindy
hours.
volunteering for this, being the person that basically runs it, knowing her, and then not being able to let go of that either by choice or being bullied into it for a year or two. I get that. Like, I could understand a transition period, but here you are, a decade later. Poor Telson has to fend for himself on his own for almost a week because Cindy's heading 3 hours south to run this little itty bitty fair, world fair, in the ward of Ameliasburg, a place she hasn't lived for a decade.
Yeah, probably more than a decade, because we moved to Trenton, like out of Ameliasburg, Belleville, Trenton area, like 15 years ago. But yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that has been a discussion for a while now. She's definitely got a smaller role in the fair than she used to. She does enjoy like she runs the craft show now, which is basically her role. And she enjoys it because she takes her pottery down and sells it. People seem to enjoy it. And she likes that part of it. I don't think she's going to stop doing that. Like, she'll make the trip to sort of have a vendor table. But I'm thinking that, and I might actually be letting a secret out at this point, but I don't think so, is that like probably next year is going to be her last year as the convener. So cross my fingers, because it's too much. I mean, she has like 2 or 3 clubs up here that she's on the executive of.
Well, that's just it. Like, you could never move now, right? Because like, if you moved, she would still be trying to do everything she's doing there as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, she's very involved in the community, and I'm very proud of her for that. But at the same time, it's like, holy crap! Like, you're busy. Like, you're way too busy.
Mm-hmm. You're the one that's working full time, and she does more work than you.
Oh, well, more work than I do. I mean, I report to work, I do my job, and then I log off at the end of the day, and I'm done. Right? She doesn't stop ever. It's like she wakes up at the crack of dawn and starts doing stuff, and then the sun sets and she's still doing stuff, and then eventually she gets tired and falls asleep. And this is what gets me, is that she thinks she's lazy. I mean, it's hilarious. Anyway, yes. So I'm very proud of my wife. I'm very proud of the things she does. The Ameliasburg World's Fair. I can't remember if it's called the World's Fair. I think it might just be the Ameliasburg Fall Fair. It's really nice. If you're in the area, if you're in Prince Edward County, check it out, because it's neat. Now, you've missed it because it's over as of this recording, and you probably won't hear this for a week or two. But check it out. It's in the fall, usually like sort of middle of September. They have a Facebook page. Early parting gift.
Well, there you go. I could see the small fair kind of coming back as the thing, the the Zoomers and younger people sort of, and I guess that's where that sort of conflict comes in, because it couldn't be the same small fair that it's always been to attract that new audience. It would need to change a little bit, but not that much.
Not much. Not much. You have to, I think you just have to give it a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more je ne sais quoi. It's because really what the large part of it is sort of the it's almost like a 4-H style of thing where they do competitions for photographs of something or paintings. They have lots and lots and lots of baked goods, and it's worth checking out just for that, because at the end of the fair they auction off all of the entries in the baked goods. So there's cookies and cakes and pies, and it's all homemade. And I mean, you can get like a bunch of homemade stuff for like a couple of bucks. Beats the crap out of buying it at Starbucks.
We should, maybe I'm a little bit self-serving in proposing this, but we need to make competition potluck a thing. You think of things like rib fests that sort of travel around from town to town, or like chili cook-offs and things like that. Like just general, a lot of food. Everybody kind of coming to show off the best of what they can do, and everybody eating way too much for like a whole weekend.
We could call it Aluminum Chef.
Okay. In half an hour, that'll be a lot more funny. So when I break out laughing in the middle of some other discussion, you'll know what I'm laughing at.
Oh, we'll be deep in discussing like actual solutions and resources for depression, and you'll just break out laughing because you'll remember Aluminum Chef.
Oh, hey, do you want to talk about some video games?
Let's do that.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
Stay a while and listen.
Before we begin actually having a discussion, I just had a thought. Can you imagine a Stardew Valley type game, but it's like massively online multiplayer, and you are literally trying to compete in a like a baking competition at a fall fair?
I wouldn't be surprised if that already exists.
It may.
Probably not in English, but
well, fair enough. Yeah. Anyway, so I made like a very short note about Horizon Forbidden West, and then we had a little get together with some friends on Friday, and you wrote a novel about stuff. So do you want to talk about Horizon first, or do you want to go into the other part
let's
first?
talk about Horizon. Explain why you're being so slow and haven't beat the base game yet.
I'm doing a lot of sightseeing. A lot of it has to do with, I was thinking to myself about this the other day. And so the reason I made this note is that you and I approach the game differently. Typically with these kinds of games, you'll play them on an easier mode because you want to see the story, right? So it occurred to me that to describe that in my own head, I'm saying, well, Shane looks at these games and goes, I want to consume this story like a movie or a book, right? And the sort of game elements around it are almost secondary to that. It's I want to see the story. I want to do all the stuff too, right? But the story is sort of the primary focus. And for me, the story is almost a thing that happens beside the game thing. Like imagine, like to take it to sort of an absurd level, imagine a game of checkers, right? Where you would be going, I just want to move my pieces to see what happens. And I'd be like, well, I want to play over and over and over and over again, and I don't really care what the story is, right? And that's taken to like an abstract, absurd amount. But I think so the thing is that you're actually sort of driving through the story, and I'm going, what's over this hill? There's a question mark there. I want to find out what that is. What happens if I shoot this scorpion? Oh, cool. I can harvest its stuff, right? Comparing stats, like I've killed, I don't know, like 400 times as many animals as you have. Because I just do that.
I don't like killing animals. I think that reflects in my stats too. I feel actually bad about it. Like I'm anti-sports hunter guy. I think we've talked about this before. And the fact that I got to do it to like upgrade my pouches and stuff, like I spent a whole bunch of shards at like cooking vendors to buy meat so that I could upgrade my pouches or whatever bones that I needed so that I didn't have to shoot a ton of animals.
Okay.
What you're saying in general, I think, sort of applies. I wouldn't say that I consume it like I would a book or a movie. Like I very much want to play the game. But to bring this back to sort of an analogy that I think we can all understand, world-renowned aluminum chef potluck competition. This game is a potluck dinner. And I don't like everything. I don't want to be the judge necessarily the first time I go through, right? Where I have to taste a little bit of everything so that I can rate it. I'm there to eat, so I'm going to pick the several piles of things that I really want to eat. That'll be sort of day one. Day two, I'll kind of go around and pretend to be a sommelier and turn my nose up at stuff and try a little bit of everything on my second playthrough. I haven't been like rushing the main line.
No, and I didn't mean to imply that you were.
Like I think even in terms of the number of side quests we completed, it's
They're
not
similar.
altogether different. I think just I'm a little bit more direct about the acquisition of that stuff in game, where I think you're sort of organically discovering the things to do. I'm a little bit more like the things are written down in my log. I'm going to go do those, right? So I'm not doing quite as much sightseeing at the same time. Also, I knew there was going to be a flying mount. So I knew that a lot of the sightseeing that I was going to be doing, I would do after I got that. I was surprised how late in the game you get that. But since I got it, I've just been taking it all in.
One of the things that, because I've been having, there's an issue where it doesn't save screenshots. So I've been taking screenshots with basically like snips or whatever, like taking actual screenshots and just saving them. But there's a bunch of things that I'm like just this just looks so amazing. I want to take a photo of it, right? So I've spent a bunch of time, like not many hours, like maybe 2 or 3 hours, just sort of jumping to places to get those shots before I realized that, oh shit, I didn't actually get to save any of those. There's been a few times too where I've had to walk away for one reason or another. So there's probably like 2 or 3 hours in there of that. But I mean, like there's a fantastic difference because I think you're 40 hours.
Yeah, it was like 45. I think there was like there was basically a full day at least of difference in terms of our play time.
Right. And I'm not finished. Like I've got 3 cauldrons done now. I just found the one that as you're wandering along, Gaia says, hey, you're close to a place where I've detected a cauldron. I think it's Epsilon. I'm almost to actually getting the 3rd subroutine. And then like I assume that there's some kind of climactic battle after that. I have a complaint. Oh my God. At the bottom of the one cauldron, you fight a shore. What's the thing that swims around? It looks like an aquatic dinosaur. Doesn't really matter.
The snap maw.
No, that's the crocodile.
The other one. Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah.
And it's so you got to bring the water level down and fight it on this island. And I'm like I don't even get to play the game, right? So I rejiggered all of my skills to take all of the things out of the melee stuff because I thought, okay, I'm hitting it with arrows, but it doesn't seem to be doing much, and like I can only get 2 shots off before it's sprayed me with something, or like it's stunned me, or it's fallen on top of me. So I thought, okay, I'll try melee. And all of the melee combos that you get are like light hit, light hit, light hit, heavy hit, light hit, special finishing move. Right. And never did I get more than 2 shots off before I was stunned or frozen or electrocuted or plasmid or whatever. So some of that is a skill issue on my part. Like I'm not trying to suggest the game is bad, but I have no interest. Normally I play these games on a harder difficulty than you do. I have no interest in going more difficult than the easy setting. None. Yeah. Like it just wouldn't be fun. And for some, it will be, right? Some people are going to be like super hardcore about, being good at beating things with a spear. just no, thank you. But I am loving the game. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I find myself, if I had a controller, it would have been thrown across the room several times, right? Because I'm just that invested in it. Yeah, great game.
So I don't want to spoil too much just because you are a little bit behind me, but we made some predictions when we talked about it last episode, which hasn't been released yet. I'm in the middle of editing it, everybody. It'll be out probably tomorrow at the time I'm recording this. But one of the things that we talked about was I wasn't jiving with the whole Far Zenith thing. I felt that at the time we would really just had one encounter with them. And to me, it felt a little out of place and a little bit tacked on. And one of the predictions you made was you had a feeling that we wouldn't really reach a climax with them, and that was going to be sort of a nugget left for the third or fourth game. Not the case.
Okay. Yeah, I've gotten a little farther, and that prediction is now going a little bit. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah,
because I found beta, and have a little bit more information about what's going on there, and it's like, okay, yeah, they're definitely the villains in this particular game.
you just have like a dirt bike rally outside or something.
My neighbor was a biker, and then they split up, so he doesn't live here anymore, but his buddies still cruise the house every once in a while. Nice enough guy, just liked loud bikes, and his friends like loud bikes, and they just, this is the road they drive on. Anyway, so like as you're gathering a little bit more information, it seems like, okay, yes, they are the villains of this particular thing, and I do like the way that they tie in why they're a part of the world based on what happened in the first game. Like that, I like getting little nuggets of explanation of stuff that happened a while ago later on, right? I like there being lots of stuff sort of left to, like, you just don't know. And I do find that this game explains things a little too much, but not a lot.
Now, I actually came around on the Far Zenith stuff a little bit as I progressed through the game. Not completely satisfied with it, but they do a reasonable job of explaining the characteristics that sort of left a bad taste in my mouth early on. So what do you know about them right now? Because I don't want to drop anything you haven't discovered.
Don't know a whole lot. After having talked to, and for anyone listening, like, spoilers, if you're going to play the game, just listen to this after you're finished. After we rescued Beta, we learned about her interactions with Tilda, which is, I think, the one that we killed on top of the mountain. My guess is we're going to meet Tilda again anyway, because I'm almost certain that they are not actually the same people, but they're clones of those people with, like, sort of personality matrices stuffed on top or something like that. But I don't know a whole lot.
Okay.
I know that we can knock out their shields, and we assume that Silence was the one who created the thing that will do that, and that he's working with the Sons of Prometheus, I think is the group of Oseram who are a little bit wonky. Yeah, so I don't know a lot yet.
Okay. Wasn't Tilda that you killed, or that was killed on top of the hill thing? That was another one.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't sort of address kind of your speculation there. I'll let you discover that on your own. But I think when we recorded last week, there wasn't enough to suggest that, like, hey, these could be the, like, original people. Originally, it felt like, oh, these are just the descendants that had left or something like that. So I think that twist that they, whether they are or not, based on your speculation and how that turns out, the original people, at least, rather than generations removed, makes some of the behavior, when you learn about the type of people that went, that joined Far Zenith, it makes that make a little bit more sense.
Oh, yeah, because they were absolutely, like, narcissist to the nth degree. And having lived so long, they would have gone at least a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, we find out that our world is ending and everybody that's been making fun of Elon Musk for building rockets learns that he's known about it for a while or whatever, and certainly has plans to survive whatever it is himself and sort of achieve immortality. Imagine how crazy he is now, and now let him live another 1,000 years. It was very clear that that's what they were going for. It wasn't particularly subtle, and they kind of achieved that. And I think it explained the bad taste in my mouth, because the bad taste, it was intentional.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they took a swing and a miss.
No, you're not supposed to like them, and they absolutely make certain that you don't. And I don't like them. They're all assholes.
Yes. Quality of voice acting and stuff was another thing that we sort of talked about, and we'd said once we got past sort of that, I'm drawing a blank on the name all of a sudden.
Oh, I know. Before the conference or whatever.
Yeah. Once we got past that, things got better, and I think for the most part that stayed consistently true. So just due to the sheer quantity of good stuff, that is, I haven't forgotten about how off-putting some of the early stuff at like Chain Scrape felt, just in terms of the quality of voice acting and stuff. But it's definitely such a minor portion of the game relative to the sheer quantity of good stuff that came afterwards that it's not even like the smallest of nits at this point. It's just, oh, hey, we said something about that.
Yeah. The thing that really turned it around for me was when you're, what is it called? The Tenakth place where they have the giant wall, the bulwark.
Yep.
The marshal that you're traveling with when you're doing that mission.
Yes.
His voice acting is phenomenal, right? Because he plays this very sort of taciturn, I'm not going to talk much. I'm not interested in, small talk or getting to know you. And that's really hard to pull off, because most people, especially people who are able to put any kind of emotion in their voice and any kind of sort of artistic whatever, are not good at being mean on like, if they're not just mean as by nature. And he was like, he walked that line just exactly perfectly of, you know what, like, I'm interested but anyway, his voice acting was just really, really good.
I drew a blank on his name last week, Nashir Dalal, who plays Katalo.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to give the shout out this week. He is, I mentioned last time we recorded, the guy that played in the Critical Role Alexandria Unlimited Downfall, which he was very good in that too. And not to take anything away from the quality of his voice acting, because it is super fantastic. The writing for his character was also very, very good.
Yes.
Of the companion characters that you come across in this game, his character is one of the few that actually has sort of an arc and a change in character and a change in the way they react to you as a player. Like, you look at Zoe's character, and I mean, very, very good, extremely well acted. And there's some emotional things that happen later in the game that are handled extremely well, but her character doesn't necessarily have that sort of shift in perspective that Katalo does throughout the game. So that really highlights, I guess, the range, the flexibility of the acting. He wasn't just good at the one thing. He handled both being a little bit antagonistic towards you, as well as basically being like the most devoted, I will die for you with one word kind of character. So really, really well done.
Yeah. It blew me away. There was one line he had that you were standing, and I don't even remember what it was. It was almost like a throwaway. Like, Aloy has walked away and he says something like, well, this will be fun. But it was just like, it was delivered so perfectly that I'm just like, I have to call this out. Like, it's just that good.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the sort of main companion voice actors, very, very good. Lance Reddick, rest in peace, as Silence. I don't know how they're going to make future games work without him. because he's always spot on. Carrie Ann Moss makes an appearance as one of the characters that comes a little bit later. Most people know her as Trinity from The Matrix. She was good. I think she was a little bit confined with the character, but totally fine.
Yeah, we saw her as a lawyer in some show that we were watching at one point, and it was so very bizarre to see her in a different role. She played a very not nice person, and at the same like a fiercely competent but almost unemotional person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I want to respect you, but at the same time, I don't like you. Speaking of the character specifically. And it was very neat to see because it's a very, very different, performance than Trinity.
This felt a little bit more Trinity-like.
Mm-hmm.
Like to the point where it was on the nose at times, but obviously that's more down to the writing and characterization than it is, her qualities as an actress.
I mean, when you're writing a video game, I can't imagine that when you're writing the script for a video game that you're not a little bit constrained to, okay, we have to make this, like everyone has to get this. You know what I mean? Yep. So you can't be too subtle. There's a bunch of times in the game, for example, where Aloy will throw away a comment like, oh, I can climb up that. And I'm like, climb up what? Like, I don't know what you're looking at. Like, flash it on the screen, point to it, something, give me an indication.
But that's what they are doing, right? She's saying that so that it's saying, hey, idiot, look up.
I know. The point is that, like, I get what you're saying, but it just makes it more frustrating to me. Right? Because I agree. Like, it's nice for her to sort of have an internal monologue to say, oh, hey, I should pick that up. Or I wonder if I could put that in there. Oh, I need to find a power cell. Or I can climb up these vents. And most of the time, like this is one of those nits, right? She'll say, oh, a Thunderjaw. And I'm like, what? Where? So I turn on my focus and I scan around. It's like, no, there isn't. Like, what? Because, you're in a Thunderjaw area, but I've already killed it. Right. But then you cross the thing where it triggers that voice trigger. And I'm like, wait, what?
Oh, I haven't run into that too much.
It's happened very seldomly. Most of the time it's like, oh, I need to climb higher. I'm like, yes, I know I need to climb higher. There was one particular thing when I was doing one of the side missions where you have to follow one of the Tenakth youth up a mountain. And there's a bridge that goes across a place that has fallen down. Mm-hmm. Right. And what you have to do is you have to climb up to a certain point. You have to jump off. You have to engage your glider and glide to the other side. Well, you climb up and Aloy says, I think I can glide to the other side of this chasm or canyon or whatever it is. So I jump, I engage my glider, but there's a little bit of a glitch at that particular point in the game where if I turn left in the glider, it turns right. If I turn right in the glider, it turns right, but I need to turn left. So I had to do it a dozen times. And every time she lands, she says, oh, I guess I'll have to use my glider to get to the other side. And every time you get to the top, she says, I can glide to the other side of this chasm. And I'm just like, holy shit, lady, shut up already. And again, like it's a minor quibble. I'm 65 hours of gameplay into this game, and I'm complaining about 2 or 3 minutes of it.
Well, wait till you get the flying mount. You're going to have opinions.
I mean, I have opinions about everything, but opinions are like assholes. I have both.
I found, the flight controls they're not bad because they're more like flight controls, but they're in stark contrast to everything else in the game. Like, for instance, swim mechanics, that it's just... I managed to get through it without remapping things and like switching any options, but it's like an inverted axis type thing mixed with the strange combination of like shift, control, and space all playing key roles in movement, but not the things that you would normally think of, right? So you think of like riding one of the chargers, for instance, right? Pushing forward doesn't do what you would normally think it would do. You have to hold shift, and that's what makes it sort of go. And then left or right, backwards don't do what they would normally do in a game like this when you're doing something like that. It'll spin you around and you'll start running in a weird direction kind of thing.
Yes.
Add an inverted y-axis to that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to do flying controls, I would really much rather they give us give us the inverted Y, give us I don't know, like yaw and pitch controls and a separate turning axis as well.
Yeah. And again, it's probably much better with a controller.
Oh, almost certainly. Like it was designed for a controller, but I can't make a controller work for this kind of thing. I mean, I probably could, and I probably should, but I don't.
I would find because especially as you get later in the game, there's so much that I have to do, like the quick snap 180, sort of quick spin to like slow something down behind me or get some distance or shoot something and then snap back around. I know that there's probably some aim assist and stuff happening when you're playing with a controller that makes that a little bit more viable, but I think, have a hard time doing it.
Speaking of aim assist, this was not a problem in Horizon Zero Dawn, but in this one, like if there's an enemy right next to a chest, you can't tag the enemy because it snaps to the chest.
Yeah. Specifically when you've got your focus active.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wish there was an option to turn that off on PC because I have much finer control with my mouse than you would with a controller.
Yeah.
Anyway. It is a small issue. Hey, listen, I know that we don't normally have an intermission, but I think we should have one because I'm out of beer.
Go get the bone shaker.
God, no. Another thing that typically happens when my wife is away is that I drink more. Not a lot more, but, from 0 to 1 is more, right? So this is a Hobgoblin IPA from Witchwood Brewery.
I think that's one of the ones that I left behind.
I think it is.
It's one of your birthday beers, so we'll see how good it is.
Yeah, it's still got bubbles. It's fine. Can't wait to come to your house so I can leave Bone Shaker in your fridge.
Yeah, no.
It probably wouldn't last as long in your fridge as it has in mine. I have basically just decided not to throw it out because at some point I'm going to be like, I'm out of beer. Oh, but I have Bone Shaker. Okay.
Do I really need a drink?
Maybe it's time to give up drinking.
I think, if I were stranded in a desert and the only thing I had was like recycled piss and Bone Shaker, I would drink the piss.
Yeah. Probably tastes better.
I mean, it couldn't be worse.
It would be difficult. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's where they get it.
It didn't taste that bad the first time, so, how much worse could it be the second time?
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yes, I know that's not how it works, everybody.
I mean, are you even ever going to go to the desert? I'm not.
I don't even go to the beach.
I don't go to the beach either. They keep trying to roll me back into the water.
You're free. Free.
And there was that one jackass who tried to fill me up with dynamite. That was an uncomfortable day.
We coined the phrase, there's always time for lube after that one.
We stole that from Evolution.
We did. So we tried something last night, was it?
Yeah, it was last night.
We've decided that in addition to doing sort of weekly-ish D&D games, that we're going to every week or two get together and just play some video games, shoot some dudes, do whatever. And listen, I know this is going to be a me problem, and a lot of you out there are probably going to say that I just need to get good. And you're partially right. We played some co-op Left 4 Dead 2, which is a game that I think before last night I had 2 hours into. lifetime. That was spread out over trying to play it over a couple of LAN parties, and it was sort of a miserable experience every time. I think I'd enjoy the game single player, like playing it through as a campaign, maybe. But I've come to the conclusion that I just don't like, in particular, playing indoor co-op shooters because it amplifies all the frictions that develop between players that are playing the game a little bit differently. And like the contrast couldn't be more clear jumping in and playing some old school Ghost Recon with you afterwards.
I have a comment specifically about that, is that we were playing with people that we hadn't really played games with very much. Like I had played with Rich. I played EQ with him forever. Right. So he and I sort of have some amount of shared gamer history. But his son joined us, and the four of us playing with you and I really not knowing what the fuck are we doing here.
Now, I want to be clear up front. I don't know if you're listening to this, Rich, or not. There wasn't a problem with either you or your son. And my griping here really has nothing to do with two of you, and more has to do with sort of that night reminding me why I've never enjoyed this type of game in this way. And we did our best up front when they were looking to join, and he said, "Hey, can my son join?" I said, "Yep, no problem at all. Don't have a problem with it. As long as they're willing to play at our pace." And there were times last night where maybe that wasn't happening, and that's fine. That was sort of a minor thing in sort of the spectrum of stuff that was rubbing me the wrong way. We were playing a multiplayer game and nobody was talking, number one, right? So there was very little of, I'm going here, look behind you here, no coordination or communication whatsoever until either somebody was dying and needed a heal or there's ammo there, get ammo, stuff like that. So there wasn't any sort of tactical planning, which is something that, going to our like playing Ghost Recon and you and I, and then some of our LAN party crew, like that's one of the reasons why we like that game so much, is it gives us the room to have the time to do that. And I understand like the game mechanics of Left 4 Dead don't leave a lot of empty space to like slow down and play at your own pace.
They do not. It is frantic. And I have to say that like I enjoyed the four of us getting together, but I sort of bowed out just shortly after you did. And it was just because like I'm tired. Like this is exhausting. There's a level of mental effort in, okay, you have to like twitch and jump and go and do and thing. And okay, you get everything you don't have any time to prepare or think or plan or just, it's just fucking go. And that can be enjoyable at times. But for me, it's a sometimes food.
You probably feel the same way about this as you might feel about Unreal Tournament. I know that after like 15 minutes of Unreal Tournament, you have expressed that tendency towards exhaustion. And it isn't just about getting your ass handed to you for 15, 20 minutes. It's about, there's a pace, right? There's just it's a constant, there's no downtime. There's a certain pace to it. And yeah, that sort of applies here. I have a problem in general with games that have kill counters. And when people get together and like, if there isn't a sort of social contract between players that the kill counter doesn't matter, and nobody, to be clear, nobody was like bragging about the number of kills that they got. We talked about it a little bit when the counters kind of came up between scenes or, whatever you want to call it in the game. But what I did find is that mechanically, the indoor combat, like you get things, we would call them choke points, right?
Yeah.
Where you got a bunch of people coming in towards a door. It's only a choke point if somebody isn't in the door. Otherwise, it's a funnel, right?
Yeah.
Because like half of a choke point is a funnel. So I would say half of the time, because I'm playing with a gun, getting ready to shoot something, have somebody walk in front of me and stop. And they're in the middle of the door. They're blocking everything. They're getting the kills. And again, it's not necessarily about the number of kills, but having the kill counter there sort of incentivizes that type of play in a way that I don't particularly enjoy. I imagine if we'd have like lowered the difficulty where friendly fire wasn't a thing, it would have felt completely different. But because it was a thing, that rubbed me the wrong way. And I know that like there's, you know, there's people that only have melee when you've got a melee weapon, and telling them to stand back while everybody else is shooting into this choke point is basically the reverse of the same situation where everybody with guns is doing a thing and that person's kind of standing and watching until somebody gets through. So that could go either way. Where in something like a more traditionally sort of open area shooter, where you still need to be tactical, I don't run into those frictions so much. And in games like Ghost Recon in particular, like the person that wants to go do that and charge through the door, they'll just die, and then I'll go to being strategic and slow and tactical like I want to do anyway.
Yeah, except for the last round of the night when you brought the Ma Deuce, or what? No, was it the MM2?
MM1, yeah.
MM1.
What it boils down to, I guess, is just that style of game just isn't for me. You know, I found myself getting annoyed, and I'm sure I was doing it too, and people would have been annoyed with me. The friendly fire is on. Zombies are coming at you. I'm in a position where I'm shooting something, and you walk directly in front of me and stop, even if there's no door, whether you're retreating or whether you're running to something.
Or panicking.
Yeah, right? I think there's a lot of sort of subconscious things that people who come from like arena shooters and stuff, or people that play like the hero shooter genre do, where there's that constant strafing from side to side to make yourself a harder target to hit. It has zero impact on playing against AI, but it does have a sort of an impact on playing against human people that are trying to aim for you. But what you're doing is swaying in and out and in and out of the line of fire of your entire team while you're doing it, which every time it happened, I was just like, and I caught myself doing it a couple times as I was panicking and retreating. And it's like, you know what? This is less fun.
It's just, yeah, it's a feature of the game. And it is one that I like. The one thing, so I mentioned that they had the duct tape mod. Do you remember when Doom 3 came out and like it was so dark?
Yeah.
And it's like, you can hold a flashlight or you can hold a gun. And I'm like, do I not have two hands? Like, I'm a Marine. Do I not have duct tape in my pocket? So they do that really well, where there's lots of dark atmospheres, but you have a flashlight on whatever weapon you've got, or you're holding one. Yeah. So you have sort of a circle of light, and that's really nice. And it's really good and atmospheric for the whole zombie thing. But there's a couple of things about the game that drive me bonkers. And that, like, some of it is level design, where they put those choke points and funnels in. But you have like friends, and it's hard to, like, there's that one place where you have to walk along the window ledge, right? Only one person can do that. Only that person can fight the zombies that are in front of them. And all of you are behind them going, eh?
Yeah.
The other thing that drove me a little bit bonkers is that, like, with a melee weapon, you go swing, 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 and the zombies are dead. With a gun, it's like you unload a clip into a zombie and it's still coming. Which I kind of get, but it feels like the sliders need to be tweaked a little bit. I mean, we're complaining about a game that was released in 2006.
Yeah, but a lot of the same things like that I'm complaining about here would hold true in sort of modern hero shooters and stuff like that too. Like, it isn't a Left 4 Dead 2 problem explicitly.
No.
One of the other sort of minor things that just annoys me, because I tend to take a more systemic approach to games like that. Like, if you clear a room, I like that room's clear, you know? I have a feeling of what is behind my back is safe or isn't safe. And I mean, they try and do a good job of making it feel like, ooh, you got zombies that are falling through the ceiling, or they're jumping down from an area above you. But there is a lot of times where it's like, there's a room that's clear. We cleared it. There's nothing in it. And now I move into the next room, and all of a sudden there's a wave of zombies that has spawned in that room to charge at us. And I know that they weren't there.
Yeah.
You know, and that is more, again, just sort of conflicts with my systematic approach to how I handle those games and wanting to make it more tactical than is probably ideal for those types of games.
Yeah. It's a game that probably does require a little bit more teamwork than we were putting forward.
Well, and what it really does is it amplifies the difference between somebody who's played the game, knows where to go and what to do, and somebody who hasn't.
And there's also the whole spawning of zombies behind you. Also, I was going to point that out, is because Rich's son had played the game. It was evident that he had played the game a few times before. And like he had a very good understanding of where do we go, where is stuff, where do we pick up the secret weapons, where's the stuff, where are the zombies going to be coming from, what zombies are going to be in this room, and that's fine, right? Because he was like, it was actually helpful to have him there because the game is on its own reasonably difficult for a new person, right? Like if you're accustomed to it, then it's all fine. But the contrast that I found between that, because there was like an amount of teamwork that was going on, like there was a little bit of communication about who's got health, where's it coming up, where can we go, all that kind of stuff. I actually found that when you and I jumped into Ghost Recon later, we didn't actually talk much about strategy because we didn't need to, right? Because we're accustomed to how each other plays. And that's a major difference between, and some of it is that we're getting older, man. So
yeah.
And the stuff that we're used to is so comfortable. And the stuff that we're not used to is just not as comfortable.
Yeah. And I guess last night, and again, I don't want to put this on Rich's son, because like the game itself encourages a certain pace. You don't get to stand around much, but there wasn't an opportunity in the middle of gameplay for me to benefit from the experience of somebody that's played the game, right? Like we weren't talking, which was part of it, but the game just doesn't lend itself to stop, let me tell you where we want to go. Let's bring you up to speed as a person who's never played this game. Here's the different types of zombies and what they do and how you want to handle them. And here's basically where we're going. And we weren't able to do that while we were playing the game. I feel like if I needed to play that game again with a group, what I would have to do is spend a couple hours reading a wiki somewhere before jumping into it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Like I have played, I had never actually finished that last mission, the one where you gotta, I guess you weren't there for the last bit of it. So the last bit of it is you're in the mall and you've got to fill up the stock car with gas in order to escape. And the gas cans are all upstairs. And what I had always done was like, go get a gas can, fill up the car. Like that's a dumb way to do it because every time you put gas in the car, you get another wave of zombies. So the smart way to do it is to throw all the gas cans down to the main level, put them all somewhere close to the car, and then fill it up really quick, jump in the car and get out.
Yeah.
And I had never been able to do it because the waves of zombies were just too much.
And to be fair, like we probably should have been playing it on an easier difficulty level as a group.
Yeah.
Given that 3 out of the 4 of us really hadn't played the game much,
But I had been to that point before. Like I had seen that car. I just had never gotten past that. And like it took hours of struggle for me to get there. Right. Like it's just like the game is, it's almost like a bullet hell kind of game, where everything is just, it's coming at you constantly, consistently. Like every second there's more zombies pouring out of somewhere. You never have enough time and you never have enough ammo.
I guess what I would contrast it to, and maybe it's a problem with the way the failure mechanic works in it. Like you and I played a Zombie Army trilogy together on a sort of a moderate difficulty setting. And we would have times where we would get our ship pushed in, where we would both die. We would go back to our checkpoint and we would have the opportunity to have a conversation and say, okay, that didn't work. How do we want to try it this time? Okay, let's go try that. And I don't know about the checkpoint mechanics, but the, losing a person and having them kind of come back later as a survivor in another room or whatever, however that works. Like it just, I never felt that we had the opportunity to be like, okay, that didn't work. What do we want to do different? I got to the point where, because of all my gripes about even trying to like shoot zombies without somebody being in the way, I basically just picked off what was rushing at me. I spent the last like 2 zones or whatever that we were playing that I was still there, almost completely healthy, while everybody's like health bars were at nothing. And I would just triage and go and whack somebody with a heal when they got low, get back. I'd sort of jump at a distance, pick off anything that was coming at me, find another health pack, not use it on myself, stay pretty fresh. And then when somebody else got really, really low, I'd dash in, throw them a heal. But that wasn't fun. Like I like playing utility characters, but it was sort of a forced role for me rather than, hey, I'm going to play the healer, because there isn't a healer. My kit is the same as everybody else's kit. the way we were going about playing just limited the way that I could play the game without being the dick that's shooting all my teammates.
Yeah, I shot a lot of our teammates because as we've established, my Twitch reflexes are pretty bad. So there was an awful lot of times where it's like, yeah, I'm shooting my teammates, and like as soon as I notice, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop. But like, there's 350 zombies on the other side of you, right? There were a lot of places where I found it's like I would really like to sort of poke my head around the door and shoot something, but I can't get there because there's a stream of bullets going past my head.
Yep.
Because that's just the way it's set up, right?
Yep.
So there's a bunch of things about that style of game that I'm not particularly fond of either. I think it was still fun. Like I still enjoyed myself.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed hanging out with people playing video games. It's not something that I do enough anymore.
Yeah. But it's that game doesn't lend itself well to noobs.
No. I think for, Friday nights or mini lands or something like that, like if you guys want to play that game, I'll probably just sort of, you guys have fun. Let me know when you're playing something else and maybe I'm in,
It might be fun to play like a different game mode, like one of the survival modes.
Not going through the campaign might have made a little bit more sense, but anyway.
It might be worth a second chance. I'm not certain it'll be worth a third. It's certainly not something that I want to sit down and play for 4 or 5 hours.
Not like D&D.
Yes. The very first thing that pops into my mind, I meant to, at the beginning of our first session of our new campaign, to say, how late does everybody want to go? And I forgot. And I got checked on that.
It was more of an emergency situation than something else. So,
okay.
It wasn't a, hey, I only want to play for an hour and a half or 2 hours tonight. It was, I got to deal with something. So,
fair enough.
Won't get into the gory details.
Nope. And I got that impression that it was like something is happening that needs to be, we're done. And that's fine. But I was pretty happy with the way things went.
So for context, it was our first session, first play session. We had a session 0, like a few days before, and we jumped right into new campaign.
Yes.
New characters, not the same sort of completely 100% homebrew game world. We started out in Waterdeep. I have a feeling that you're leaning on some existing material, but you're going to put your own spin on it, of course. It's material that I don't think any of us have done before, so it almost doesn't matter. The difference was evident right away because, like, literally, everybody's here. Okay, let's start. And then you started reading a block of flavor text, extremely descriptive flavor text. You were doing like a 17 pages of Robert Jordan talking about the change in the seasons kind of flavor text, which is not something
I wrote that. That's me. That was not existing lore. That was me.
Okay, well, that's not something that ever happened in your completely homebrewed game.
No, that's true.
But it was like, this is different. Okay, this is good, right? Because I think one of the things that kind of came up as we were talking about the other campaign was that some people they felt a little bit lost as to where we were, what was going on, blah, blah, blah. So immediately set the tone of like, here's a dump of information. You're in Waterdeep. This is the time of year it is. This is the shit that's happened to you. Now what do you want to do? Which was good. I thought it worked quite well.
Yeah, it felt pretty good. The only trouble that I have when I'm leaning on something that's a little bit established is that I find myself wanting to push a little harder, which is not necessarily a problem for our group because we do tend to meander a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I prepared some stuff and I set up, okay, I need to make sure that I've read this far ahead and that I have maps prepared for this stuff. And here are the encounters and here's how they're going to work. And here are the characters that you're likely to encounter. And here's what their motivations are and how they interact with each other. And I did all of this. I sort of crammed it into 2 days to try and learn, like, what is the city of Waterdeep? Because I didn't know much about it. And I did all of that. And I thought, oh, man, you guys are going to chew through this so fast. Mm-hmm. And then you got through about 10% of what I had prepared.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty common when you don't have a gauge for that kind of stuff.
It's hard.
Well, and we're all playing new characters, which have sort of new flavor, nuances that we haven't explored yet. So guessing how pacing is going to work is going to be impossible for the first few sessions until you get a feel for it.
Yeah.
I think we talked a little bit more, like as
Yes.
characters in character, than we were doing in the previous campaign, which I thought was a good start for us to sort of buying
Yes.
into what you're doing. I think we all picked, like, we chose characters that are going to lend themselves to our strengths as players and allow us to do, like, you know, some of the things that came up. Cindy mentioned it, I mentioned it, like we want to do a little bit more role playing, but the role playing needs to kind of be constructive role playing, sort of not the juvenile silly stuff sometimes, but like stuff that moves the needle, but have the chance to learn about each other and what motivates each other, and, you know,
Story.
substance, right? Role playing, but substance. And I thought we did a pretty good job of making that work even for session one, considering the characters haven't, in the game's lore, in the past of our characters, we've established a rapport as we all know each other, but actually playing them around the table, we haven't done that yet. That felt pretty good, I thought.
I thought so. Yeah. Like the sort of interaction that was going on was like it felt useful, you know, like it had, as you say, some substance. There wasn't just, oh, this is my catchphrase and I'm going to say it 7 times. It was conversation happened.
It happened, but it also happened around what was happening in game, right? So it wasn't us having a sidebar conversation about, you know, ooh, look how weird and quirky I am. It was us having sort of natural behaviors appropriate for our characters and discussion appropriate to this guy showed up. Do we trust them? Hey, there's an orc, half orc woman. She's about to get into a fight. Who the fuck's that guy? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a promising start. It was session 1, so it's too early to draw any big conclusions, but I thought it was a promising start.
Well, it's definitely better than your reaction to session 1 of the previous aborted campaign.
I don't think I had a huge negative reaction to that. I just think that we as players, all of us, and you as DM, learned some lessons from that, and sort of we all planned for this a little bit better, you know?
We all did, yes. Well, and some of that's on me, that I was like trying to create this thing, and I wanted to flesh it out, and I wasn't motivating myself to do it. So I was like, I'll just start and see how much I can paint ahead of us. This is like the old timey video of the guy laying the railway tracks in front of the train as the train is moving. It's kind of what I was trying to do. Didn't work. Lesson learned.
No, but, you know, like, I mean, we had a session 0. Session in 0 involved questions like, what do you guys want out of the game? What style of game do you want to play? What types of characters do you want to play? What sort of themes do you want to explore? What did you like about the stuff that we were doing before? And what would you like to see go differently? We didn't do that last time. And I think, you know, to be fair to you, you just kind of picked up a game because, like, oh, we keep talking about wanting to play and we haven't played. Like, I ran that group for a little while and things kind of petered out just to scheduling restrictions, right? So we went, like 8 months, 6 months, 8 months, something like that of not playing. And then we're like, you know what? We should get together and play some D&D again. I guess I'll start something next week. And that's kind of what happened, right? You and I were talking about doing some world building, and you're like, okay, well, I'll give you guys your characters Sunday, and then we'll just sort of play and see what happens.
And we saw. I mean, it like there was some positives that came out of it as well, right? Like we added Rich to the group, which was good.
Hey, we were playing D&D. That's a positive, right?
Yes.
Like, no matter how many gripes you have about how we were doing or how things went or what was going on, we were playing D&D. Everything after that is nits.
Yeah. Yeah, it was still fun to get together, even if it wasn't like there's a bunch of story kind of in the background that I'm not going to say, because I do still want to do something in that world with a group of people who may someday listen to this, but there's a bunch of secrets that were like, I was just sort of putting Easter eggs in places so that you guys could figure out later on that, oh, that's what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it was just, made up on the fly. We'll see how this goes.
So do you, now that we all kind of created our own characters for this one, do you have any sort of general comments about the characters?
I was surprised with you playing sort of the, stereotypical low intelligence barbarian. I think that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you. But so far, I'm really enjoying how you're playing it. I think that everyone has sort of almost leaned into type, which is exactly the opposite of what I tried to do with the last one, which wasn't intended to be, like this.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be permanent.
No, it was supposed to be like 3 or 4 sessions, and then let's re-roll and start a real campaign.
Well, we finally got around to it.
Yeah, we finally did that. And so I think, so Cindy is playing a rogue again, which is sort of her comfort place. Tanya's playing a bard, which is what she likes and understands. Rich playing a cleric. When I first met Rich, he was his main was a cleric, and he was two boxing. What the heck was his other character? I cannot remember. It was something, and then he switched to something anyway. But so cleric is sort of where he goes as sort of like either option A or B.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see what he has in mind. I don't know what sort of discussions he has for you. I didn't look at his character sheet to see if there was any bios. I saw that he gave us observer permissions. I'm kind of hoping that he has a bit of like a shepherd book kind of thing to him, where there's this, because he's a cleric type character, right? Very much in an environment that isn't clericy. Like he's rolling with a crew, kind of like the crew of Serenity, right? That's just like, I mean, it's really, really good that you're here and you're awesome, but like, it's kind of weird that you're here, right? In that way that we never got to find out about Shepherd Book's character. Like we got the idea that he had some weird past and stuff like that. And they hinted at it in the Serenity movie a little bit more, but we never got the details. That's one of the many, many absolute sins that came out of that show getting canceled as quickly as it did. But I'm kind of hoping there's a little bit of that with him. I don't know what he has planned.
Well, I mean, I can't. He did in his sort of introduction of his character and why it's with the group. He did say that he sort of, left to do, go out in the world and see things, fell in with your crew, and basically went, "Oh wow, these people need me."
Yeah,
and that's pretty much why.
Yeah.
So I think there's some of that vibe there, and that's definitely the vibe that I would expect you to get from his behavior, which is, you're going to do what you're going to do, and I'm going to try and, curb your excesses if I can, or lean into them if they're appropriate.
Preach some religiosity to us.
I mean, he's a dwarf, so maybe not. Maybe he'll just say, drink some more beer, fall asleep.
It was nice to see Cindy playing a character where she got to be creative in combat.
Mm-hmm.
She was playing the barbarian before, and like she was trying to do her flavor thing, but like barbarians aren't notorious for lending themselves to creativity in combat. Their thing is let's hit it hard and get mad.
Yeah.
So, seeing her do something like try and slip some blasting powder into somebody's pocket so that we can ignite it on fire and stuff like that. That was fun to see her do that. I haven't played with her playing a character where she's done that, be it Anthea or Kea or Roy. They haven't been characters that did that. So it was nice to see it. I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed that I got to give Rich's character Ozzy credit for the whole thing, because that's what I saw. Ozzy set the guy's ass on fire,
Well, and that's the thing too, is that like that's very much in keeping with her character, where it's like, yeah, I did it, but you didn't see me, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And she's been very busy this week, but I'm going to do some of her sort of inquiries around that. Because when we ended off our session, it was you guys got a mission to go and find someone's friend, got a little bit of information about that. And she was going to reach out to her criminal contacts in the city to, find out what she can about this person, whether, the mission is legit and on the level, or whether you're being sent on a wild goose chase, or whether it's a trap and all that stuff. She's obviously been a little bit busy this week, so she hasn't. We haven't talked about it. But one of the things that I'm going to do, just sort of like off screen, is that she's going to go and do those inquiries, and then I will give her sort of a lore dump for her to give what she wants to you. And then that'll probably be the opening of next session, which will hopefully be next week, but no guarantees. Because I'm traveling to meet my parents next week. It's like my wife and I can't exist in the same space for more than a couple of days before one of us has to go do something.
Speaking of my character for a moment, because I think it is going to be a challenge to kind of stick to the character type. But in a funny way, the character is allowing me to be a little bit more meta than I could be playing a character that's straight. Like, for instance, being able to work in, like, I played Baldur's Gate 3, so I've seen Volho before as I had a dream about a guy like this sticking a needle in my eye. Stuff. Like, that's the kind of thing where I think this character who just blurts whatever he's thinking kind of out can do in a way that it's not in keeping with the game we're playing. It's very much sort of a meta thing, but I can do it in character, I think, in a way that doesn't feel disruptive.
Yeah, no, and that was a really good thing to throw in. I got it. I don't think anyone else did, because Cindy hasn't played the game that far.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tanya has played. Here's the thing, is that, like, even in, like, when we were playing Ravenloft, like when we were playing Strahd, like, yes, it's a dark setting. Yes, it's dour and dark, and there's all kinds of nasty things happening, and it's very spooky and creepy and all that kind of stuff. And there's atmosphere. It doesn't mean that you can't throw out a Monty Python reference from time to time.
Yeah.
Like, it's a game and it's supposed to be fun. And to me, one of the things that is fun about D&D is, like, what kind of out of character references can I throw in that sound appropriate, but we all know aren't?
Yeah.
So I'm drinking beer on the show for the first time in several episodes. And unfortunately, all of those bubbles are making me burp. And I'm trying really, really hard, for the sake of our editor, Shane, to, mute those out. But there's a few that are going to get left in.
Whatever.
I imagine you're probably going to leave them in just to embarrass me.
We'll see. I'll get around to editing it in a week or whatever, and we'll see what kind of mood I'm in.
It's one of the reasons that I did not get promoted when we were working at the call center, is because I made a belch that was heard on someone else's call.
That's funny. I did actually, as I was editing last episode, halfway through it, we did something where you told a joke at the beginning, and it was so, like, bad. You said something like, are you just putting the intro in post? Like, normally I say something and then you'll run the thing, but I don't hear it. And I said, no, I wasn't going to, that wasn't funny enough or something like that. And then we said something else afterwards. Anyway, I left that whole conversation in.
It was an amusing conversation, I thought.
Yeah, normally I'd try and chop that stuff up so that there's just like a little one-liner before the intro or something like that. I was like, fuck it. We're leaving it in.
Oh, it's appropriate. It all hangs together. I watch a show called Have I Got News for You on the BBC. And it's basically a panel of 4 comedians talking about the news. But it's very obvious from watching the show that like some of it gets cut out. Like they record, I don't know, like probably 2 hours, 3 hours or something for a 40-minute show. Right. And you can see sometimes people making references to an earlier joke to make sure that the earlier joke makes the edit. It's like, this is definitely going in. So if I make a reference to the earlier joke that I made, then that also has to go in the edit. Otherwise, this comment doesn't make sense. You can't use that.
This is where I'm supposed to bust out laughing about Aluminum Chef.
That was a really, really terrible joke.
It was. I'm glad you made it.
I mean, I amused myself. I'm sure no one else is going to think it's funny. That's fine. I don't care. I'm doing this to amuse me.
So you had a couple of other table talk related things that you wanted to go over.
I do, and I have to give another shout out to Ginny D, because I basically lifted these wholesale from her last couple of videos. And min maxing is a thing that comes up, and I was thinking as I was listening to sort of this was from Dimension 20. They were having an argument about min maxing, and whether or not, because we used to call it munchkining, right? Mm-hmm. Which is slightly different in context. But it's more or less the same thing. And I just want to make the comment that optimizing your character is not a problem unless it's at the expense of the other people at the table. Right. Yep. And that's really where it becomes a problem, is if, and I mean, like, for example, in our previous campaign, you were playing a Gloomstalker, with, all of the various optimizations and stuff. And that means that, like, in the first round of combat, you do an absolute boatload of damage. And I was trying to buff people with stuff, and I didn't really sort of pay attention to that and gave you a little bit of extra, and you self-corrected and went, hey, this is happening and it's really cool and all, but it's at the expense of everyone else's enjoyment. We should tone that down.
Yeah.
Right. And that's I think it's perfectly fine to want to optimize your character to be as good as you can be, but you have to realize that you're sharing the table with a bunch of other people. So sometimes you just have to go, I could do that, but you seem very excited about doing that, so you go ahead and do it.
And what I would say is that if you're the type of player whose victory condition is you get the kill, you do the awesome thing all the time, you, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you've optimized your character or not. The way you're playing the game might not lend itself well to everybody at the table. I'm not going to say you're doing it wrong, because there would be tables where maybe that style of play is appropriate, but they're probably going to be few and far between. The victory condition for D&D is never something that, like, if it feels like a single player game to you, you're playing it wrong. Really.
Unless you're playing by yourself.
So min-maxing your character, optimizing it is absolutely not a problem. Again, if it's not at the expense of everybody else. I would go so far as to say as you should be lifting up everybody else by doing it. Then it's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be a good example to other players as well, especially if you all sit around and go, like, hey, you did that really cool thing. Like, how do the rules work that happens? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, let me show you how I figured that out. And then, we can adjust your character maybe so that you have those things too.
And one thing that I would say is that, like, hey, you're all smart. You play a game that requires a certain amount of, like, intelligence and savviness and understanding of game mechanics and whatnot. You can all read the room. You can be carrying a tactical nuke in your pocket. It doesn't mean you need to open with it every time.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself, again, Bug, the character in the last campaign, the Gloomstalker, not only did I recognize that the synergy between, like, the cookie that you gave me sort of extra above and beyond the character build was a little OP, but even without it, I know enough to know, this is a mob that, like, is, I don't even necessarily need to know what the CR is. It's like, but you know what? My party's got this. You don't need me to drop this in the first part of initiative. Mm-hmm. I can do something else. So there's been a lot of times in character as Bug where I would be like, okay, my party's got this. I trust that they have this. I'm going to walk over here and just make sure nothing's coming at us from behind, or I'm going to interact with the environment or something else. You don't always need to open with a nuke.
Yes.
It's nice to have it in your pocket, because there's going to be situations where it's like, we might all die if I don't pull this nuke out right now. And hey, wouldn't this be the perfect time to just pull off the most awesome turn, most awesome combo I can as a character and have it be sort of this epic thing.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to, you know what, a movie that I reference all the time, one of the greatest movies of all time in hindsight, The Incredibles. You've got that line from Buddy, you know, that when everybody's super, nobody is.
Yeah.
And that sort of applies to like you and yourself. Like if you're always doing amazing things, it's just normal shit at this point. If you're thinking of like creating a document, typing it out, and you make every word bold, nothing's bold anymore. It's all the same.
Yeah.
So while you have those sort of crazy ass abilities to do crazy shit, save them for when they're narratively appropriate. You know, that's not to say don't have fun.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're the kind of person that enjoys that meta aspect of the game, sort of bending the mechanics to your will. You need to see that play out sometimes, right? Like you need your reward is seeing that you came up with something that was greater than the sum of its parts. But that doesn't need to be the opening move, you know, when you're fighting a fucking, you know, CR like 1/8 little goblin-y dude.
Yeah. There's a skeleton and you're level 5. I hide and assassinate and opening salvo. And I also, you know, add the thing and the other thing. Yeah, you don't need to. I think you handled it really well. There's also like there's some amount of like the DM has to be on top of that a little bit as well.
Sure. That needs to be an ongoing conversation with the player. But B, you know, the DM needs to recognize, okay, this player is doing this. He has these tools in his tool belt. Let me give him something that allows him to use the tools while not creating a situation that leaves the rest of the party with nothing to do.
And also, from time to time, challenge those boundaries because Bug had a major weakness.
Yeah.
If there was somebody right next to him, he wasn't that great.
Yeah, absolutely. As a player, embrace those weaknesses also, right? Don't look at that as, oh, the DM's trying to spoil my fun. Find fun in that. Find fun in your character's flaws. And if nothing else, it gives the other characters a chance to come to the rescue for you for a change.
Yeah. There's an invisible dude. He appears right next to you and you get stabbed. Now what? Well, now you got to figure that out, right? It's not a slap. It's not even a counter. It's just like, here is a different puzzle for you to figure out a different way to solve.
I think we're going to run into sort of similar things with the character that I'm playing now for the opposite reasons. So I'm playing your sort of stereotypical totem of the bear barbarian. I have resistance to basically everything except psychic damage. I'm a big sack of meat. And my guy is super meaty because he's like thick with 3 C's. That's the way I described him. He's a half orc that is, you know, not just tall, but like big around. He's a big old oak stump.
He's a half orc and a half.
Yes. But, you know, when you have that type of barbarian in your party where you've got all of those resistance, and I tried to game it a little bit with you. I'm like, okay, I kind of want to get into half plate eventually. I understand why you might not want to give it to me now, which is why we're having a conversation. You like, well, I mean, if you want the AC, you could take a shield. And I'm like, nah, thematically, that's not going to work. I'm fine going with unarmored defense for a while. Because I get at this level, like that's sort of a challenge. One of the things that I want to do with this character is try and find ways to, and maybe it's the Baldur's Gate 3 influence, where I'm not always just hitting something with my big stick. I want to be trying to pick up and throw people, lots of shove stuff. Like I want to try and engage with the environment a little bit more. Would have been a little bit probably more fun if I'd gone with the Path of the Giant, but that wasn't available in the D&D Beyond stuff. And then I wasn't going to re-roll once I used my Character Mancer. I'm fine with the subclass that I'm playing, but that's going to create a challenge for you. Like, you know, if you knew I was going to be trying to throw everything around, like, oh, well, we're meeting at the yawning portal where there's a big hole in the, you know, first thing I did, like when there was that encounter that we weren't even in yet, I want to pick up this guy and I just want to dangle him over the hole until, you know, this encounter's over. Didn't work out
Mhm.
that way, but like that's what I was trying to do. And I think as a character, as a player, that's kind of my goal, is to try and find more than bashing it in the skull.
Here's something that I thought about afterwards, because I wanted everybody to have a bonus feat to start with. Did you take a bonus feat?
I did. I took Sentinel. I wanted
Okay.
to, which is also why I ended up, because with my type of barbarian, you also, or with the Sentinel feat, actually, you get sort of a exotic-ish weapon, which is why I've got both the Great Axe and the Halberd. The Halberd has the extra reach. One of the things with the bear barbarians is they fall into that sort of tank fallacy, where you don't have abilities that actually, at least until later levels, allow you to like maintain aggro, if you want to think about it in MMO terms, right? Like a tank isn't just about having a lot of health and being able to take a lot of damage. It's about being able to force the enemies to attack you instead of your party. My type
Yes.
of barbarian really doesn't have that. So by going the Sentinel feat, I can at least position myself in a situation where I can use my reaction to, as people try and get away from me, reduce their movement speed to 0.
Right.
Which achieves tanking on a small scale. It only works, I only got one reaction per turn. So, but it assists that. It was more of a sort of a party synergy role kind of thing, like a utility thing. I could have gone with something else.
Tavern Brawler fits really well with the sort of archetype you're looking at.
I thought about it. It was going to be a little too self-serving, and I think, I can probably, like, I don't need everything to do a lot of damage when I'm doing that stuff. Improvised weapons, stuff like that. I think just being able to pick a guy up and dangle him over a hole or off a cliff and, try and I have a good chance of failing that, for one, which is kind of important. I'm not double dipping, doing like crazy ass character shit while still getting weapons damage and stuff like that. Like I'm making sacrifices in terms of my damage output to try and do the different play styles. Now, if I'm shoving a guy down a hole where he falls to his death, tomato, right? Like,
to an extent. And the thing about Tavern Brawler that I like is that then you can then use like an NPC as an improvised weapon and throw them at somebody.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you can do that anyway. It's just you have a better chance of it succeeding if you have the feat.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I considered it. But I looked at it and I'm like, well, we have like a cleric that is, I didn't want to force him into a healing role. We have a rogue and we have a bard, fairly versatile classes. And I thought, well, you know what? If I can be the meat here, that'll give everybody a chance to kind of do their thing. And if I take this Sentinel thing, it'll make me tank-like without turning me into like a ridiculous tank that also takes some agency away from a DM, right? Like when you have abilities that literally say, you can't attack anybody but me.
Yeah.
That limits you a little bit. Where what I have is kind of a balance of like it sort of maybe mitigates some of your movement. It's not going to prevent somebody from doing a ranged thing. And I can only do it like one reaction per turn.
There's some room somewhere in sort of a meta idea of the rules for like a feat that gives you an extra reaction. And I think there are some that do something similar.
I think so. I can't remember what they are offhand, but anyway, you know what, with the makeup of our group, and I mean, you're going to balance combat around whatever our group is anyway. Like if I do something crazy that changes the sort of scope of the battlefield consistently, you're just going to adapt to that and adjust it so that we're going to have the same amount of challenge anyway. So it's just
often on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's like, okay, well, this combat is going like way easier than it needs to be. And sometimes that's fine, right? And sometimes it's like, okay, well, like reinforcements or, somebody gets a second wind or, hey, there's a healer in the rafters that you didn't scope out or something. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, that does definitely. Yeah, it gets balanced on the fly a lot. Because I don't do like calculations to figure out where things go. I go, that looks about right. And sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm way wrong.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to have stuff in your back pocket too. You know, sometimes the best way to handle it is, and then these guys show up.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of, and then these guys show up, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this one did come from Ginny D, because last week, I guess, she read the entire Dungeon Master's Guide, found some new stuff, which is probably a good idea. Like, I need to actually do that. I have never read the whole thing, right? Like, I've looked up bits and pieces and tried to figure out what's different. One of the things that she was talking about was random encounters, and everybody hates them because they're boring as shit and they don't move the story forward. But there were a couple of ideas that she brought forward that I thought were interesting, at least. So one of them is like, they don't actually have to be random. Like, you don't have to roll dice and then say, oh, and then 1d6 wolves show up. You sort of create, like, these are 5 or 6 things that might happen. And if there's a sort of a lull in the game, you pick one, or you roll ahead of time or whatever. You say, like, if they do this, then this encounter will show up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, rather than thinking of them as random encounters, think of them like extra stuff that's in your back pocket that if you need it, you can just go, here it is, I've already prepared it.
Yeah. And that's the way you want to look at it. You know, like, you're in a city. Let's just say you're in a city, right? You can pick some thematically appropriate things that require minimum preparation. So what are these, appropriate challenge-ish rating mobs can I throw together into a random map, whether it's a street, whether it's an alley, whether it's a, whatever, palace, church, you name it. Easy to prepare. And they're there so that when your players say, let's go do this, or I think where I've commonly used them is they're doing something that I need time to prepare for this now, but we need to have something to do tonight. Right? Like, yes. It's the start of a session. They've taken a hard left turn that I didn't anticipate. I can completely improvise it and it's going to be less good. Or I can throw a little bit of a speed bump at them to get us through this session in a way that doesn't feel like I just threw something at them, right? You always want to try and spin it so that it felt like you meant it, but you had it in your back pocket. Now, one thing that I would say, random encounters, not necessarily random combat encounters.
That was my next point, is that they don't all have to be about beating up monsters and taking their treasure.
Yeah. You can have social encounters. You can have...
Oh, you meet a peddler on the road and he's going to sell you. He's interested in, I don't know, your sword, and he's got some magic beans to sell you. Right? Like, you can play that out in a way, like, it's going to take some time. It's an interesting challenge and puzzle. Maybe he has some interesting stuff that you do want to buy, but not the magic beans.
Yeah. I actually used one in my last session, the session before. I just kind of brought it in as a little bit of filler, but a similar type situation. A couple of the party members were walking through a gate to go somewhere that I wasn't quite ready for them to go yet. And what happened is they sort of walked through this gate and there was sort of an argument going on. One guy was accusing another guy of stealing something from him, and there was a guard that was trying to sort of...
Just the facts, ma'am.
Adjudicate what was going on, right? And I mean, the TLDR is what was really happening is both of those people were in on it. They were creating a distraction, and while all the crowd was drawing in to rubberneck, right? See what was going on. Ooh, somebody stole something. The guard's going to arrest somebody. Somebody else was kind of rocking around the edges of their crowd, picking their pockets, right? Like, it was sort of a planned kind of staged thing. There wasn't any combat there. Players had a chance to figure it out or not figure it out. There was some nice social stuff going on. They could have interrogated the people. Like, there was a lot of options for the players to do anything, really. It required zero preparation on my part. It was just like, I've got a guard set thing, like a little checkpoint kind of map. Let's do this.
Yeah. And there's things that... one of the things that you said in a previous episode about when you were running your characters through the Running Man game show thing, that really resonated with me and is stuck in my brain, is that there's often times where you will throw something like that in, I need a little speed bump or I need a little diversion because, like we want to play for another hour or so, but I'm not ready for them to do the thing that they're headed towards. And that becomes sort of the seed of some story arc that is going to happen later.
Yeah.
Right. Like later on, you meet the guard, except he's not in his guard uniform anymore because he's been fired because he was suspected of being part of this pickpocketing ring thing.
Yeah.
And now I either got to get him his job back or find him something else to do, or maybe the pickpocketing ring is a bigger thing and it's this giant grift that's going on across the city and you've got to solve that. And it all just comes out of a little sort of extemporaneous moment.
Yeah. And for a random encounter, like don't overplan it because like a lot of the ideas that might come out of it are going to be seeds that are planted by the players. They're going to ask a question, right? Like, for example, they asked, do I get the impression that, this guard might be in on it?
Yeah. Did they actually ask that?
They did. You
yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, it's the first thing that popped into my brain.
And then I kind of left it off as sort of he doesn't seem to be in on it, but at one point in time, he sort of reversed it and wondered maybe the player was in on it and just kind of became this sort of thing. But I could very easily have, depending on how they rolled and reacted, that could have gone down to, ooh, the guards are corrupt and there is this big sort of conspiracy going on in town and yada, yada, yada. But that could have started not necessarily from the random encounter explicitly, but how the players reacted to it, the questions that they asked, whatever the ideas they injected, you can kind of pick it up and run with it.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing when your players do your thinking for you?
Oh, it is so much easier when your players say something like, hey, we should check this out. And it's like, cool. Now I don't have to figure out what we're doing next week because that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And you can prepare ahead of them.
So random encounters, do them. They don't always need to be combat. They don't always need to be random. I would suggest, and again, it completely depends on your table and the type of players. Like if you're doing a hex crawl adventure where the whole point of it, or you're doing like a West Marches campaign kind of thing or whatever, random. But if you're playing it like a general campaign, and you tried this when we were doing Strahd initially, because it's in the book. You're like, okay, you're going to travel here. I need you guys to, you're going to set up camp here. Who's staying awake? Who's not? And there's sometimes you can still do that when it's like, ooh, I have an interesting idea.
Yes.
I'm going to make the party think that everybody in the city is zombies and they're going to murder all of them. They're not going to think it's real until 6 sessions from now when they find out it was real.
You know what? Yeah, you keep bringing that up and I'm totally okay with it because I am so proud of that idea.
Oh, no, it was absolutely hilarious. But that was the moment where it wasn't you make camp. Who's taking the first watch? Okay, give me a constitution check. Let's see if you stay awake. Okay, you stay awake. Give me a perception roll. Okay, you're surprised when the bandits sneak up on you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, well, we defeat the bandits and it's going to be another 2 days travel to the city. So you're setting up camp again. Who's doing watch? Don't do that in your game unless your game is designed around that shit. It slows things down in a way that isn't super fun.
It's okay to do that sometimes.
Yeah, but you don't need the pretenses of the setup for it at that point. You can just as DM say, okay, well, as you're traveling through here, you reach this intersection and you see somebody hanging from a gallows, or there's somebody that's dangling from a tree or whatever. You can kind of set it up without the mechanics for setting up random encounters. The rolling of dice and looking at a table, and there's nothing worse than it's like, oh, this random shit shows up. Well, that doesn't fit here. Why the fuck am I being attacked by anthropomorphic raccoons? I'm in the middle of Barovia. I read the wrong table.
Yeah. The other thing is that your table, if you are rolling on a random table, your random table should be customized to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Unless there's a really good reason. Like, for example, there was one time that I was running a thing and there was an encounter with some kind of animated metal dog-like thing, right? And it was it was a level 3 or 4 campaign, but it was like a level 15 creature. Obviously, far too powerful for the party. But they fought for a couple of rounds, and then there was a noise, and it ran away. And it never actually worked out. But that whole thing was set up so that 5 or 6 levels from now, you are going to encounter these creatures and understand why they're there, and then hopefully think back to 10 or 12 sessions ago and go, oh, that's what that was, and that's why that showed up. So it make your random encounters really shouldn't be all that random. The only reason that you should have random encounters that are actually random is if you're literally just, your campaign is punching monsters and taking their stuff.
Yeah. In which case, fine. Everybody is on board with that. That's the social contract. Go for it.
Modern D&D, it's all about talking to each other.
Sure is. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think I've shot my wad, bro.
Thanks for that. Well, you've given your parting gift. I'll give you mine.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
Just going to clean up first.
You just got to have wet wipes next to your computer for various reasons.
Sort of D&D related. My parting gift is a YouTube channel, and I actually kicked you a video. You've probably watched these guys already. It's called Deer Stalker Pictures, and it's a group of people that are primarily cosplayers, but I think they do pretty incredible production value of the stuff that they're doing. D&D centric, but they do riffs on video games and Legend of Zelda stuff. There's been some Genshin Impact stuff where they act out sort of D&D like things in characters, so that's people all in cosplay dressed up. They're leaning on tropes. They're playing against tropes sometimes. Sometimes there's interesting sort of justifications for what they're doing. They're making fun of a particular mechanic or a particular class. It's not always story or anything. One of the recent ones was why wizards being glass cannons and how ridiculous that situation could be. Or, another recent one was stuff about animated weapons, spectral weapons. It's just a lot of goofy shit in there, but it is fun. It's all very tongue in cheek. I got to show my wife one of the recent ones, which the bard who looks like, I don't know, think of your idea of a pirate. When you picture a pirate in your mind, long, dark hair, kind of beard, pirate-ish, swashbuckly getup. And essentially they were making fun of disguised kits and disguised self, where this noble dude thought that he was the daughter and he was pretending to be a twin or something like that. But it's very clearly, the guy all dressed up in the noble woman's clothing, but he's still got a beard and everything. And the noble's reacting, oh, my daughter, he's doesn't see through the disguise. It's all very, very funny. It's schlocky. It's not going to be for everybody, but the production quality of what they do for a YouTube channel is quite amazing. They all clearly love what they're doing, and they're all charming people. I think it's what people if you watch it, it's what people that don't know what D&D is think D&D is. Imagine if all D&D was LARPing. That's kind of what it is.
Oh, this is I didn't know who it was until I looked them up real quick, and then it was, oh yes, I know exactly who you're talking about. And if you're describing them as LARPers, they are the hardest of hardcore LARPers. They are the kind of people that would come to your LARP, and instead of throwing tennis balls and shouting lightning bolt, they would have meticulously crafted lightning bolts from foam and some kind of gold lame, and they would have them the flight characteristics mapped out so they could actually hit them with them from across the field.
Yeah, I'm sure behind the scenes it's like that. You don't really see that so much in video, but it is all very good. Deer Stalker Pictures, check them out.
It is good stuff.
So I need some more tequila. And I'm out of stuff to put it in.
Oh my God. You know what? This podcast is turning you into an alcoholic because you're now your mix, your soft drink is a hard cider. It's like, I'm going to mix my tequila with a soft drink. I know, I'll use cider.
I said it's been a hell of a week.
I guess so.
Honestly, it hasn't been that bad. I'm playing it up a little bit. It's called Nerding Under the Influence. It's funny. We were sitting at dinner, Tanya and I, and she's like, "Oh, do we need to go to the liquor store? You're recording tonight." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got a cider." And she said, "Well, that's not much under the influence." And I said, "I'll mix tequila with it." So here we are.
Oh, man. I actually did go to the liquor store this week and I bought a bottle of gin because I found myself really enjoying gin. And I also bought a bottle of Kraken. So next episode will likely be... maybe I'll mix gin and rum and see how that goes.
When is Cindy back?
Tomorrow. No, Monday.
And so we should record tomorrow again because it's all downhill from here.
I may actually eat some vegetables on Monday.
Well, it's been good talking to you, man.
And you as well, sir. I hope that we get the Aluminum YouTube Award.
That was beneath you.
Yeah, probably. But it amused me.
Glad it amused someone.
Yes.